Good evening, everybody. I'm Panos Mavropoulos, and in the past, I used to be an army officer. Currently, I teach strategy and theory of war at the Hellenic Army Academy, and since this very month, at the National Defense College of Greece. First, I want to thank ERPIC and Mr. Panagiotis for his invitation to talk to you about such an important issue as cyber security. Let's move on then and start with my presentation. I'll find it. No, I didn't mean that one. Well, I'll skip some slides since I want to focus on the most important issue. First of all, since we talk about cyber security, we need to take a look on what is the cyberspace. There is a misconception, and most of the people will talk about cyberspace meaning internet. Guess what? Cyberspace is not just the internet. We all understand that internet is the biggest part of cyberspace, and we might not even talk about cyberspace if it was not for the internet. But there are other important things, and in the context of this presentation, the other stuff is more important than internet. So there are apart from the internet, which, as I said, forms the biggest part of the cyberspace, there are isolated networks. These networks are networks that the people that they run them want to protect them. So they just create an air gap between the networks and the outside world. So it's difficult to have access to that and do your work with that. Except for that, there are isolated networks that are connected to some industrial control systems, and in particular SCADA is supervisory control and data acquisition systems. Those systems are used to control big machines, dams, power generators, stuff like that. And this is very important for the issue that we will talk about. Except for that, there are all these hardware production facilities which are very important in cyber war, in cyber security. There are the software houses, which by definition are very important, and we should not forget them. Connected or not connected to the internet doesn't matter. And last but not least is the academic institutions where all this research is done, and we should be very, very cautious about what is going on in these institutions from the security point of view. So cyberspace includes all this stuff, and we should pay attention to that. So why cybersecurity issues come into the play? Because of a combination of three factors as they're showing on the screen. So there are parties in our life that will act in a deliberately hostile on antisocial ways. So you cannot avoid that. So that's number one. We as a society, we rely on information technology for a large and growing number of societal functions, and this is very true, and we cannot deny that. And third, the IT systems, no matter how well constructed, inevitably have vulnerabilities and they can be exploited. And I remember when I was young and energetic and I was studying, they used to say in the States that, well, 90% of the programs that you will construct will have flaws that could be exploited. So watch out for the mistakes. At that time, no one was thinking about cyber security. The only thing was that this program that you're building sometime will stop functioning. The only thing was that. And you need to go back and debug it and find all the bugs. But no one was thinking about exploiting this system, except of course for NSA and CIA and all these institutions. So let's take a look in the actors. Who's acting in cyberspace? And actually, this is the threat. The cyberspace actors can be grouped in 4 general categories. The way that I see it, it can be other groupings, but I chose to put it that way. So the first one is activists or hacktivists, they are called, and the most famous ones are the anonymous. There are the criminals. So these people, they whatever they do in cyberspace, they do it for profit. And then it's the terrorists. This is the terrorists came in the forefront in the last decades, so they should be taken into account. And the last and the most important one is the state actors, the states, which is the ones that we'll focus on. I have some slides which I will not talk, so I want some more time to focus on the state actors. And this is easy to understand. And I talk about hacktivism. I save this for later, and I need to reconstruct them. The crime and the terrorists right after that. And let's go to state-sponsored cyber activities, which is the most important one. So there is an nexus with cyber security and national security. This is what I want to talk about. Before that, since I use 2 terms interchangeably, I want to make sure that you know what I mean. It's cybersecurity and cyber war. I will tell you right off the bat that's cyber war. What I mean by cyber war is cyber war is a euphemism of cybersecurity, depending on which side you are. Defending, you try to secure, and attacking is cyber war. Anyway, I will use those 2 terms interchangeably, depending on what side then you understand. So first, I'll try to understand that to convince you that state-sponsored activities in cyberspace, in their most part, are part of war. And to do that, I will resort to Clausewitz and his monumental work on war. So the teacher said that war is a violent act aiming and imposing our will onto the enemy. So this is famous, so I don't need to stay on that. So if the aim of the war is to impose our will onto the enemy, achieving that through the use of cyber capabilities, cyber power, by definition characterizes such a cyber activity as cyber war. So why I need to kill people, to impose our will on them, and not do it without bloodshed? This was an argument by Sun Tzu and Moltke and others that I don't need to kill someone to have a successful war. So now I have the capability to impose my will on my enemy. Why then this is not war? That's my question. So for my thinking, cyber war is the use of cyber capabilities aiming and imposing our will onto the enemy. And this is what I will consider a cyber war from now on. Now, cyber war can be combined with kinetic war, or it can be waged independently. Now, we are at cyber war's infancy. That means that we haven't seen much. What we need to do is we need to wait and see. In that phrase, what I try to catch is what is the relation of cyber war and the classical war. What is the relationship between cyber capabilities and armed forces? And my thesis is that cyber war exceeds the armed forces. Cyber capabilities is at the grand strategy level. There is a thing which is called the element of power. It is not the source of power, it's the elements of power. And by the American logic, the elements of power are mainly four. And it's diplomacy, economy, military, and information. To that, recently, some people will tell you that soft power is also an element of power. And Joseph Nye is the guy who coined the term. I would add to that cyber power as a sixth element of power. And I say that this sits at the government. The government has to use cyber power along with other elements of power to protect and advance national interests. And that, by definition, puts it at the grand strategic level and at the same level with the military. And I will come back to that. First of all, I want to talk about cyber incidents, so we know what we are talking about. The first one, the first incident, we had some incidents, and I'll come back to some minor ones. But the first serious incident happened in Estonia, April-May 2007. For 19 days, Estonia was under a cyber attack as a state. Everybody thought that it was the Russians, and this is not out of the blue sky. It was before that we had riots by the Russian-speaking people of Estonia, which is a huge part, something like 25 to 30%. And the reason was that the government moved one statue of the Red Army from the center of the city to the outskirts. When the riots finished, then Estonia was under attack. The attack is called distributed denial of service attack, and the whole Estonia was frozen. now we need to know that Estonia is one of the most wild countries in the world. Being a small country and coming out of the Cold War, they decided to invest on electronics and software and the IT infrastructure. So they have a country where even to pay for milk, you have to use your credit card. So there is no cash, there is no nothing. So when the ATM couldn't give you money because it was hacked, and you cannot get the information, you cannot get nothing. Banking system was stopped. Then the people started worrying about and everything. So that was the first serious attack, and the importance of that is that it was the first time that cyber war was used against a state. Right after that, NATO started thinking about what to do. Last September at the summit, at the NATO summit in Wales, they decided that they will call Article 5 in case that the IT infrastructure of a member state is under DDoS attack. I don't know how this will be implemented, but it remains to be seen. And after that, they created a center of excellence in Tallinn, Estonia, and it is run now, and it produces stuff for cybersecurity. So Estonia was the first time that cybersecurity was used against the state. The second incident was next year in August 2008, when we had that war for South Ossetia. The Georgians the status of South Ossetia was, I think, semi-autonomous. But there was no Georgian army. So Georgian army actually went into that little place. They called the Russians for help. The Russians started an offense. They broke into Georgia, and after the intervention of France, there was a ceasefire, and they came back. But the Russians recognized South Ossetia and Abkhazia at the same time as independent states. What is the importance of that incident is that the kinetic attack, the classical war, was combined with a cyber attack. The problem in this case was that Georgia was not as wide as Estonia. So there was not much to hit with the cyber war. And so the only thing that was used was that web defacement. Of course, there was distributed denial of service attack, but the most important thing was the web defacement. That means at the lower end of the spectrum of cyber operations. But why this is important? We see that from now on, kinetic war will always be accompanied by cyber attacks. This is the most important thing that happened in cyberspace since the 90s, when cyberspace was invented. It's the Stuxnet incident. Well, the aim was Iran's nuclear program. Iran has an uranium enrichment facility at Najaf, And everybody knows that the United States first and all the West after her tried to stop that, because everybody believes that Iran is aiming at having the big bomb, the atomic bomb. There are economic sanctions. There is the threat of war, sometimes played very well, sometimes not very well. There is this threat of surgical strikes by the Israelis. Nothing seemed to work. So what do you do? Either you go to war or you do something else. No. Cyber war gives you the solution to the problem. So what they did, they constructed a malware, a piece of software that would hit the Najaf enrichment facilities, but not the way that we have seen it. Everybody was thinking about another way, a way that working on the software side of the house, you would destroy things, you would kill people, but no one has seen it. So everybody believes that it was the Americans and the Israelis who did it with the help of the Germans, because this facility was running a Siemens system. So the Germans revealed all the details to the Americans, and the Americans with the Israelis constructed that malware. Now the problem is that the facilities, they have an isolated network. You remember we talked about isolated networks. The way that it was done was that they constructed the software and then they put it on memory sticks. And the memory sticks were distributed. The program reached every place in the world. And fortunately for them, as they planned it, it reached also the facilities. And the facilities, the program was like a bomb, a smart bomb which would explode against that certain conditions are met. So when that program found itself in the right place, then it created, it destroyed the centrifuges of the enrichment facilities. So the program went like 2 to 3 years behind. It's not easy to do it. And that, to me, is a miracle. It's something that everybody wanted, everybody imagined it, but no one believed that he would see it. So we saw it. This is what we call the SCADA system. A SCADA system which controls the uranium enrichment facilities, and then you have a program which goes there and hits the SCADA system. So what we have now, we have the cyber war to cause destruction. We haven't seen killings, but I'm sure that we will see them, not directly, but indirectly, we can see that as well. So the Stuxnet was the third case that I want to talk about, and that happened in 2010 and required a huge amount of money and some years to be constructed. Some people say that the experiments were conducted in Israel, in that I don't remember the name, that place that they have the atomic installations in the south, and well, that can be true as well. So that's how we see cyber war or cybersecurity from the other side. So let's see the type of attacks that can be implemented against the state. During peacetime, what is the activity in fact? So during peacetime, what we have espionage. That's normal, and it's done with humans. Why not with cyber? Then it's the experiments. So what you do, you construct a piece of software and you want to try it. So this is how you try it. During peacetime, you send it and it sits dormant somewhere, and at some time you decide that I want to experiment, see if it works. Well, I'll tell you how it's done. It cannot be done directly. I remember in 2004 there was a big storm in, I was living in Washington DC, there was a big storm in the East Coast. And for 10 days there were places that they didn't have electricity. To me it was strange. A country like the United States couldn't restore that. What I believe, because CIA already declared that the power system, power generation and distribution system of the United States is already hacked by the Chinese. So I believe that at that time it was something like that. So what you wait for a condition like that, and then you experiment. And the people will say, okay, is that a malfunction or it is a cyber attack? I don't know if they can find it, but it's very difficult. Also, the Chinese did something else. They attacked the same thing, the power generation distribution system of 5 cities in Brazil. But it's not known. I heard an American saying that. The issue is that when you receive an attack, it's in your best interest not to publish it. You don't want to talk about that, because you show to the people how vulnerable you are, and you might invite some other attacks as well. So this is how you experiment. You experiment with Brazil, and you know this works. And then you wait for the big Satan. Logic bomb implants, it's another thing. I have a story in the 70s that happened in Siberia. At that time there was not cyber war. This was, we used to call it electronic warfare at that time, but it's clearly cyber war. Today it's cyber warfare. The Americans succeeded in getting into the maintenance chain of the gas pipes of the Russians through, if I remember well, it was through the Canadians. So they had a logic bomb in one of those printed circuit boards, and what they did is they controlled the pressure. It was that the printed board was to control the pressure within that pipe. So I don't know the details, but they succeeded in exploding the whole thing. And they say that was seen by the astronauts. It was such a huge explosion. So these are things that you do and the other thing is the botnet. Now, what is a botnet? A botnet is used for the distributed denial of service attacks. What you do is you hack into a normal computer, you make it your slave, so you put a little piece of software into that, and when you send a command, this starts sending requests for service to a specific IP address. So, of course, the computer has to be live and has to be connected to the internet. But the number of computers in the botnet is, these computers are called zombies. The number of computers, the biggest number that they discovered was 12 million computers. So you can imagine, and it's around the world. So if I decide one time to use the botnet, what I do is I send a command to all these computers, and they start sending requests for service to a specific country, to a specific company, to something. That means that that country will be flooded by requests, and at the end, the servers will crack down, and there's no work for them. And this is how the distributed denial of service attack is done. So during peacetime, this is what I do. During conflict, we talked about that. Web defacement, which is just a nuisance. Distributed denial of service attack. And the biggest thing is attack against the critical infrastructure. And critical infrastructure, you can see it. The air traffic controlling system, the banking, railways, traffic lights, sewage plants, water systems, dams, electric power production and generation, refineries, oil and gas pipes, stuff like that. You attack that, and you try to inspire fear in the people of a country, and make them believe that their government cannot protect them. This is the general idea. This is what I do. The same thing I do with bombing, physical bombing. If I do that, what I try to do is to inspire fear in these people, and what they will do, they will press their governments to submit. This is the general idea. If this will work, no one knows. Was not tried. So these cyber incidents proved that a well-planned cyber attack against a state is possible. So we saw it. We don't need to imagine. Stuxnet in particular demonstrated to the world that industrial systems can be sabotaged physically by malware. A threat not believed to be possible by the cybersecurity community, but not actually observed. We hadn't seen that. Now, apart from that, this is what we do against the state. But there are some cyber fallacies. People believe that okay, we live in the IT age, and cyber war is, and you know, they say that now the small countries can use it, and they will fight that asymmetry with the big powers. Well, wake up and smell the coffee. This is not true. So the first fallacy I want to talk about is cyber attacks are easy to implement. Yes, it's true. I told you, for its web defacement and distributed denial of service attacks are easy to implement. For more sophisticated attacks, which is the most decisive ones, as against the SCADA system, the critical infrastructure, the knowledge required is huge. Is not that easy. The other thing is know-how is easy to acquire. No, it's not easy. Yeah, you can do web defacement. You can hack into a computer, and the computer will say, you know, Panos goes here, and that's it. So this is a nuisance. Someone will, in an hour, they will fix it. But if you want to go to a higher level, then you need time and money. Cyber attacks are cheap to launch. Yes, this applies to DDoS and web defacement. But for attacks against the SCADA system, or against the critical infrastructure, the funds are really enormous. You cannot do it. You cannot do it easily. Well, some people will say, now we have Stuxnet because the code is can be found. And you reverse engineer it, you know what it does, and then I can use it for the... No, that's not true. That's not true. This is a good piece of software, but it was designed specifically for that system. So to use it against critical infrastructure, you need to know details about the target. And that will take time and money and expertise that most of the people or the states or the terrorist organizations cannot have it. Well, as I told you, the people believe that now small states can easily acquire those weapons and stuff like that. No, the truth is that the existing asymmetry will only become larger and larger. You cannot fight that because the rich will always be in a better position than the poor. So what do we expect? Cyber arms race, as it was used with typical arms race, this will be done also with a cyber war, cyber capabilities. And as I told you, the asymmetry will only grow. So cyber mercenaries are a growing problem. You know, now you can hire people for $200 and ask them to do whatever you want. Of course, the loyalty of the mercenaries is in question, especially when you don't see them. You just send money, what do you do? And you ask them to do, how you're sure that they will do it. But there are mercenaries today and they are used. I remember I saw a Russian talking to some journalist, and he said, I was a young guy. He said, in the past I did it for patriotic reasons, but now I do it only for money. There is a serious black market for zero-day exploits. These are the vulnerabilities that you can find in software. Now with $50, you can buy one of those. This is information. You know that this program has these vulnerabilities, zero-day exploits, and then you exploit that to make the attack. And there is a growing black market into that. What about terrorists? I don't think the terrorists will have the money, though they have the ability to raise money. They will have the money and the know-how to cause damage in through the cyberspace. That is not expected. This can be combined with the fact that the terrorists want to use the internet. That means that this is a means for them. So why they would destroy that, or why they would reveal their capabilities? There is a significant number of botnets, as I told you. These are zombies. They're computer under control of someone, which remain dormant, waiting to be used if there is an opportunity. The hacktivism type of anonymous stuff will remain a nuisance, and I don't think we need to worry about that. So at the bottom line, distributed denial of service attack and web defacement are the main means for launching cyber attacks in the near future. Attacks against SCADA system, industrial control systems, will be rare, but destructive and possibly deadly in the future. So my conclusion: cybersecurity is a never-ending battle, and we don't expect to find a permanent solution in the foreseeable future. The problem will never be solved once and for all. It will be an action and reaction, and this will keep going on for years. But cyber war is real. Though the capabilities of the big powers are not revealed, for the moment there is a secrecy in the system, but we know that cyber war is real. Cyber war happens at the speed of light. That means that there is no time to respond. Cyber war is global. It can be raised from any place of the world against any other place of the world, and you don't need physical presence at the opponent's borders anymore. Cyber war skips the battlefield, exceeds the armed forces. That's I told you that it's something. It's at the same level if we talk strategy. And cyber war has already begun. What needs to be done? What we should do? Well, at the strategic level, government level, there is a requirement for a national cybersecurity agency. There are not many countries that they have it, but we need to establish one, to nominate an agency to do that thing. And this agency will put together a national cybersecurity strategy, which by definition will emanate from the national security strategy, or to rephrase it, you need to go revisit the national security strategy and insert in some places things about the new threat, cybersecurity. This already was done already by some countries. Then this agency will identify the state's critical infrastructure and do a threat assessment for each one of those. And as I told you, these are civilian targets, are not military. This is what you're afraid, that someone will attack your civilian infrastructure. The military is not that much under threat. The military has a long tradition in protecting their systems. At the operational tactic, no. Then you need to have a national level computer emergency response team. I don't know if Cyprus has it already, but I can tell you that we don't have it. In Greece, we have nominated the Central Intelligence Agency, but I don't think that this solved the problem. So at the operational tactical level, we need the cyber operations planning staff and execution unit. Someone has to plan operations, and there has to be an operation unit who will execute that plan. And this needs not to be the military, though most of the countries, they have it in the military, but if I had to decide, I would never give it to the military. At the technical level, then we need to pay more attention to the IT infrastructure and secure it as much as we can. But most importantly, we need to revisit the processes. 80% of the problems will be solved if we enforce the processes. You know, checking IDs, who's authorized to see. For instance, you should not allow anybody to see documents because they are, you know, at a certain rank. There is that thing which says you have to have the need to know. If you don't need to know it, then you shouldn't know it. But that's something that we didn't do it. It's done in the States, and I know it. Overall, we need cybersecurity awareness. We need to convince our people that this is real and it's already here, and we need to do something about it. And with this, I think I have finished my presentation, and I'm open to questions.